The rusted hospital gate creaked as Okafor pushed it open. He winced at the sound, glancing quickly over his shoulder as if someone might scold him for disturbing the quiet of the night. But the compound was still. The nurses on night duty were inside. The patients were sleeping, and the hum of the generator at the back of the building drowned most other noises. Okafor pulled his jacket tighter against the chilly Enugu breeze. It was almost midnight, another long night stretched ahead. He had worked as the night security guard at Mother of Mercy Maternity for nearly 5 years, but every shift felt heavier than the last. His wages were barely enough to cover food and school fees for his children, let alone rent and other family needs. His wife had stopped complaining openly, but her eyes told him everything: disappointment, frustration, and silent anger. Sometimes, when Okafor leaned against the gate post and watched the empty road, he wondered if his life would ever change. Maybe this is how God wants it to be, he often told himself, but deep down he knew he was tired of struggling. That night, as he made his usual rounds, torchlight in hand, he passed near the back of the compound where a new pit had been dug. The nurses called it the Placenta pit, a deep hole where they disposed of placentas and other waste from childbirth. Okafor never paid it much attention before. To him, it was just another dirty job the hospital had to manage. But tonight, something felt different. He stopped and stared at the spot, listening. It was quiet, yet he thought he had a faint rustle, as if the wind carried whispers. He shook his head and spat on the ground. "Old man, you are hearing nonsense." Still, as he walked away, he couldn't shake off the strange pull the pit seemed to have on him. He told himself it was nothing, just another night, but somewhere deep inside, curiosity had stirred. 2 days later, Okafor sat by the gate, chewing roasted groundnuts he had bought from a hawker. The sun was high, and the compound buzzed with the usual activity of expectant mothers, crying babies and nurses rushing in and out. As he sat, 2 young nurses walked past him, chatting loudly in Igbo. He wasn't paying attention until he heard one of them laugh and say, you no go believe. Those Yahoo boys they buy placenta now no big money." Okafor's ears twitched. He turned silently, pretending to focus on his grandnose, but listening carefully. "Serious?" the other nurse asked, lowering her voice. "Yes, now, my cousin in town told me one of his friends dey HK. Dem say na placenta dem need for some kind rituals. If you fit get am, e fit change your life overnight." Both of them giggled as they walked away, their voices fading. Okafor's hand froze mid-air. Placenta? People were actually buying that thing? He looked toward the back of the hospital, where the pit lay hidden behind a row of cassava plants. He remembered the strange feeling he had the other night. His heart beat faster. "Big money," he repeated under his breath. That evening, as he walked home after his shift, the West refused to leave his mind. He looked at his shabby slippers, his patched up trousers, and the tired faces of his children waiting for him at home, and he felt a dangerous thought rising. The following week, while running an errand in town, Okafor bumped into a familiar face. "Papa Chinedu," the young man shouted with a wide grin. Okafor squinted. It was Chiboy, a boy from his village. The last time he had seen him, Chiboy was barely out of secondary school. Now, he wore designer clothes, his phone looked brand new, and he spoke with confidence of someone who had tested money. "Chiboy, is this you? You don't change, Joe," Okafor exclaimed. Chiboy laughed, showing off a gold tooth. "Na so, Papa Chinedu, na hustle dey pay." Okafor shook his head. "Which hustle? I hope say na better work you dey do. G-boy chuckled. Papa, forget that talk. I dey HK. We dey online. You know dey hear? Okafor frowned. He had heard of HK, Hustle Kingdom, what they called internet fraud. Teenagers locking themselves indoors, pressing laptops and phone, living big on money from unsuspecting foreigners. He never approved of it, but the proof was standing right in front of him. Okafor muttered. As they spoke, Chiboy leaned closer, lowering his voice. Papa, abeg, no vex say I ask. You dey work for that maternity for GRA abi? Okafor stiffened. Yes, wetin happen? Chiboy's eyes gleamed. I fit connect you. You dey see that thing wey dem dey bury for back, the placenta, na big material o. If you fit get am, forget suffering. Boys dey pay well. Okafor's heart pounded. The words of the nurses echoed in his head. Here it was again. Confirmation. He forced a laugh. Chiboy, you wan carry me go prison? Abeg, leave that talk. But as they parted ways, Chiboy's last words burned into him. Papa, na this hustle dey feed me today. Think am. No be everybody wey dey suffer go survive. The night was dark. Rain pounding on the hospital roof. As Okafor made his rounds, his torchlight flickered, cutting through the sheets of water. He stopped near the pit, his heart raced. He knew the nurses had disposed of something there earlier in the evening. He stood frozen for several minutes, wrestling with his conscience. Okafor, no do am. This na sin, this na abomination. But another voice inside him whispered, what is sin when your children are hungry? What is abomination when you are drowning in poverty? Finally, with trembling hands, he pulled out a nylon bag he had hidden in his pocket. He reached into the pit, gagging at the smell, and carefully scooped out a fresh placenta. His stomach churned, but he tied the bag tightly and slipped it under his raincoat. His heart pounded so loudly, he feared the nurses inside would hear it. The next day, he met Chiboy in a secluded street. Chiboy's eyes widened at the sight of the bag. He quickly passed Okafor a bundle of notes. Okafor stared at the money in disbelief. It was more than his monthly salary. Papa, na small one be this. Continue, and you go enjoy life, Chiboy said with a grin. As Okafor walked home, a strange mix of guilt and relief washed over him. He told himself it was just this once, but deep down he already knew it wouldn't be the last. Within 2 weeks, Okafor's life looked different. He bought better food for his family, new shoes for his children, and even managed to repair the leaking roof of his house. His wife Ngozi noticed, but did not question too much. She was simply relieved to see her husband finally providing. But for Okafor, the taste of fast money was addictive. He found himself sneaking to the pit more often, each time convincing himself it was harmless. After all, the hospital was throwing it away. G-Boy introduced him to more boys in the city. They spoke with arrogance, flashing iPhones, drinking expensive liquor, and tossing money around like tissue paper. Na materials dey run things, one of them said, slapping Okafor on the back. You dey do well, Papa. But the more he supplied, the heavier his heart grew. At night, he sometimes woke up sweating, convinced he had the cries of babies echoing in his ears. Other times, he thought he saw shadows near the pit. Still, he kept going. Poverty had no mercy, and money was too sweet to resist. What Okafor didn't know was that, with every stolen bag, he was digging not just the pit behind the hospital, but a deeper one for himself. Enugu city nights had a rhythm of their own. Neon lights flashed from clubs along Independence Layout. Music pounded from bars, and sleek cars lined the streets. Okafor followed Chiboy into one of the clubs one Friday night. He was an out of place in his worn sandals and plain shirt. But once inside, his eyes widened. The HK boys were everywhere. Teenagers barely in their 20s, throwing money into the air like confetti. Some poured expensive drinks on the floor as if to prove they had more than enough. Others danced with girls in skimpy dresses who laughed at every word they said. "Papa, you see life?" Chiboy shouted over the music, shoving a drink into Okafor's hand. "Na so we dey flex, forget suffering." Okafor looked around. He saw laptops on tables in the corners, boys typing furiously, pretending to be someone else online, tricking foreigners for cash. He saw others bragging about their latest runs, boasting about how they sent dollars into their accounts. The energy was intoxicating. For a brief moment, Okafor forgot his shame and worries. He saw only wealth, freedom, and power. But as he sat watching, something gnawed at him. These were children compared to him, living in reckless abundance while he, a grown man, stole in the shadows for scraps. And yet the boys treated him with respect. "Papa, now you dey supply the materials. Without you, we no fit run things." Their words flattered him. Okafor felt important. But importance in the wrong company is a dangerous thing. Soon, the request doubled. Chiboy called almost every other day. "Papa, boys they rush this thing oh. We need more materials. Try bring 2 or 3 at once." Okafor's stomach tightened. It was risky enough sneaking one bag. Carrying multiple, if he got caught, it would be the end. But the lure of money silenced his fear. At night, he became bolder. He timed the nurses' shifts, studied their movements, and learned exactly when the pit was filled. The smell no longer bothered him. His hands moved quickly and confidently. But with every thief, strange things happened. One night, as he bent over the pit, he swore he had a baby crying faintly. Another night, he thought he saw small footprints in the sand, though no child had been near the place. "Fear no go help you," he told himself, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Now just your mind they play tricks." Still, unease lingered. Back in the city, the boys welcomed him like a king. They handed him words of naira, laughing, praising his courage. But each handshake, each grin, carried a hunger he couldn't ignore. They wanted more, and he was the only one feeding them. It didn't take long before whispers started in the hospital. One morning, 2 nurses argued behind the ward. "I dey sure say some of those placenta bags they miss. I counted them yesterday. Na lie, who go carry that kind dirty thing?" But the rumor spread. The matron, a sharp-eyed woman, began to investigate. She ordered stricter disposal, insisted the pit be covered, and warned all staff about ritualists. Okafor's heart thudded whenever she spoke. He avoided her eyes, but he knew sooner or later suspicion would fall on him. At home, things also grew tense. Ngozi, his wife, noticed he no longer complained about money. He bought food in bulk, gave her extra cash for market, even gave his children pocket money. "Okafor, where this money they come from?" she asked one evening. He waved her off. "Ngozi, no dey worry yourself. God dey bless me small small." But her eyes narrowed. She had lived with him for too long not to sense something was wrong. Meanwhile, in town, one of the HK boys had a ritual that went horribly wrong. His name was Ugo, barely 19, full of swagger, always boasting about his new Benz. One night, after using a placenta in his ritual, Ugo began to scream uncontrollably. He tore his clothes, ran into the streets, and shouted nonsense about babies chasing him. By morning, he was rolling on the ground, foaming at the mouth. News spread quickly. One HK boy don run mad. He dey shout say placenta dey talk to am. The story shocked the group. Some boys laughed it off, saying Ugo didn't follow instructions. Others grew scared, avoiding Chi-Boy and refusing to use the materials. But Chi-Boy, desperate to maintain his standing, pressed harder. Papa, abeg no stop, boys still dey buy. Ugo na him problem, you no fit stop the hustle because one person fail. Okafor nodded, but inside, fear ground at him. Each time he touched the pit now, his hands trembled. Still, the money was sweet. And poverty had long ago taught him that fear does not feed a family. At home, Okafor's teenage son Chinedu had begun to notice things. His father suddenly had more money. He overheard whispers about HK boys in school. He saw his friends wearing new shoes, carrying expensive phones, bragging about their uncles or brothers in the city who pressed laptop. One evening, Chinedu confronted his father. Papa, why we dey suffer before, but now money dey, you dey do HK? Okafor stiffened. Chinedu, no ever talk that nonsense again. I dey work hard for my family, that's all. But Chinedu's eyes gleamed with curiosity. He was at the dangerous age, half innocent, half hungry for quick wealth. Later that night, Okafor overheard his son telling his younger brother, one day I go join HK. I no go suffer like papa, na so boys dey hammer. Okafor sat in silence, his heart breaking. He had become the very example he once warned against. But it was too late. He was in too deep. Ngozi could no longer keep quiet. One afternoon, while sweeping their small sitting room, she stumbled on a nylon bag tucked behind the old sofa. Inside were bundles of money wrapped in black tape. Her hands shook as she pulled them out. It was far more than her husband's salary could ever provide. When Okafor returned from his shift that evening, she stood waiting at the door, the bag in her hand. Okafor, explain this. Where you get this kind money? He froze, sweat breaking out of his forehead. Ngozi, it's nothing. Don't lie to me. You think I don't know you? Something is wrong. Tell me the truth before it destroys us. He raised his voice in anger, more to silence his guilt than to scare her. Ngozi, leave me alone. I am doing everything for this family. If you don't like it, then don't eat the food the money buys. Her eyes filled with tears, but she said nothing more. The house was heavy with silence that night. Meanwhile, at the hospital, the matron's suspicion sharpened. She ordered workers to padlock the placenta pit and keep the key in her office. Unknown to Okafor, she also arranged with management to set up a trap. The net was closing it. It was a moonless night. Okafor walked his rounds as usual, torchlight in hand. Sweat clung to his skin. Though the air was cool, he had planned carefully. He had stolen the duplicate key to the pit. He glanced around. The compound was quiet. With shaking hands, he opened the lock and lifted the cover. The foul smell rose into his nostrils. But by now, he was used to it. He reached in and pulled out 2 nylon bags. As he straightened up, a voice called through the darkness. His torch slipped from his hand. 3 shadows stepped forward, the matron, another security man, and the hospital administrator. Behind them, a policeman emerged from the darkness. Okafor's heart stopped. Caught red-handed, the matron said coldly, "So you are the thief, stealing from this hospital. You shame your uniform." The policeman grabbed him before he could run. The placenta bags fell from his hands, splattering on the ground. Okafor struggled, shouting, "Please, please, I can explain," but his words sounded empty. Swallowed by the night, the secret was out. The news spread like wildfire. By morning, everyone in the hospital compound and half of Enugu was talking about the placenta guard. Patients whispered in fear. Some mothers threatened to take their babies elsewhere. The hospital's reputation shook. But it was Okafor's family that bore the deepest shame. In the market, Ngozi was mocked. "See your husband, ritualist. So na placenta money you dey chop." Women laughed as she walked past, her head bowed in humiliation. At school, Chinedu was confronted by classmates. Your phone a ritual supplier. Na him they give HK boys materials. They laughed and jeered until he ran away in tears. Even Chiboy and his fellow HK boys cut ties with him. When the police stormed their apartment looking for links, they denied knowing him. Okafor sat in a dark police cell, his wrist cuffed, his dignity gone. His mind replayed every decision that led him here. Each time, the memory of that first stolen placenta pierced him like a blade. He had thought he was feeding his family, but all he had fed them was shame. The court trial was swift. Evidence was clear. He had been caught with the placenta bags. The judge's words echoed in the courtroom. For desecrating human remains, for bringing shame to this institution, and for participating in ritual supply, you are hereby sentenced. Okafor barely had the rest. His head spun, his chest heavy. He thought of his children. He thought of Ngozi. He thought of the dignity he had lost forever. In prison, he saw other men like him, ordinary people who made desperate choices and paid with their freedom. Some were once teachers, drivers, and market traders, all broken by poverty and crushed by greed. At night, he could not sleep. The cries of babies haunted him. He saw their faces in the dark, accusing him, asking why he had turned their first breath into blood money. Meanwhile, outside the prison walls, the HK boys continued. New suppliers rose, new scams blossomed. The cycle went on. Okafor realized the bitter truth. In a world obsessed with quick wealth, one man's downfall does not stop the madness. Years later, long after his sentence, Okafor returned to his village, a frail shadow of a man he once was. His children had grown distant. Ashamed of their father, Ngozi, though still by his side, spoke little. He sat under a mango tree one evening, watching young boys stroll past, their faces lit by phone screens. They spoke loudly about HK, about hammering, about traveling to Lagos to stay indoors. Okafor shook his head. The cycle was still alive. He closed his eyes and sighed deeply. Poverty had tricked him into believing there was no other path. Greed had blinded him. Fear had come too late. Now, with every beat of his heart, he wished he had remembered one simple truth, that fast money is never free. It always demands a price, and sometimes your freedom, sometimes your family, and sometimes your very soul.